You don't belong here." The words cut through the crowded room like a razor blade, but Maya Brooks didn't flinch. She never did. She simply kept her posture straight and her eyes calm, just like her grandmother taught her. But deep down, the sting of Preston Vale's words was sharper than anyone could know. Preston, the CFO of one of the most successful tech firms in the world, had just publicly belittled her in front of a room full of billionaires. All because she dared to touch the phone that was ringing on the side of the table. But she was no stranger to being underestimated. She had been doing it her entire life, showing up, being seen, but never really being heard. Not until tonight. The luxurious restaurant, perched high above the shimmering skyline of Manhattan, was filled with clinking glasses, chatter, and the scent of rich food wafting through the air. It was the kind of place where deals worth millions were signed without a second thought. Yet, for all the wealth in the room, no one had bothered to notice Maya. Not until now. Alexander Whitmore, the billionaire CEO who ran one of the most powerful companies in the world, sat at the head of the table, completely oblivious to the tension bubbling just beneath the surface. He had everything: money, power, influence. Everything but humility. Maya, on the other hand, had none of that. She had only her sharp intellect, her work ethic, and a deep well of resilience that came from years of struggle. As the room continued to murmur around her, Maya turned away from Preston's sneer and glanced down at the phone. The name flashing on the screen was Tanaka Global, a name that could change everything for Whitmore's company. Hiroshi Tanaka, the Japanese CEO who was about to sign an $800 million deal with Whitmore. But this call wasn't from Tanaka. It was his daughter. And from the sound of her voice, it wasn't good. "Please," the voice on the phone pleaded, her words barely audible over the static. "They're trying to pull a fast one on him." Maya's heart raced. This wasn't just a business deal. This was a chance to save not only the deal, but possibly a man's career. She glanced around the table. Alexander Whitmore, oblivious to the fact that his fate might be in the hands of a woman he thought of as nothing more than background noise. Maya had seen it before, rich men and women treating the staff like invisible people, dismissing them with just a glance. But Maya wasn't invisible. Not tonight. "Please, he's being misled." The voice continued, panic creeping into her tone. "I think the contract's been altered." It took Maya only a moment to understand what was going on. The translation of the contract had been tampered with, key terms hidden, numbers altered, and the real deal was in danger of falling apart. Her mind raced. She was a server, a waitress. She didn't have the credentials to challenge a billion-dollar deal. She wasn't the one who should be answering a call like this. But she was the one who understood the language, the culture, and the urgency. And right now, that was all that mattered. As the murmurs of the room grew louder, Maya made a decision. Without hesitation, she picked up the phone, ignoring Preston's glare. She didn't care if he scolded her again. She wasn't going to let this man's arrogance take everything down. "Tanaka-san," she said, her voice clear and steady. "I'm Maya Brooks. I'm here with Mr. Whitmore. There's been a mistake." Silence. A long pause followed, before the woman on the other end responded, her voice trembling with disbelief. You speak Japanese?" Maya smiled to herself. Of course she did. But that wasn't the point. The point was she could save this deal, and her chance to make a difference had just come. She was no longer the waitress in the background. Tonight, Maya Brooks was about to change the game, and no one in the room had any idea what was coming. As Maya spoke, she could feel the weight of every eye in the room turning toward her. She didn't flinch. Her voice was calm, but her heart raced. She could feel Preston's glare burning into her back, but she wasn't looking at him. She was looking at the phone, at the crisis unfolding on the other end of the line. Tanaka's daughter, Yuki, was speaking faster now, her voice tinged with panic. "Maya-san, this is urgent. Mr. Whitmore doesn't know that the numbers have been altered. If he signs that contract, Tanaka Global could lose everything." Maya's fingers tightened around the phone as she processed the information. This was no longer about just serving dinner. It was about something much bigger. She glanced at Alexander Whitmore, still seated at the head of the table, as he laughed with his colleagues, completely unaware of the storm brewing. He didn't know that one small mistake in the paperwork could undo everything he had worked for. "I'll make sure he doesn't sign," Maya said, her voice firm, resolute. The words were more for herself than for Yuki. She had no idea what kind of repercussions this would have, but she knew she had to act. "Thank you, Maya-san," Yuki replied, her voice full of relief. Maya felt a pang of empathy. She could hear the exhaustion in Yuki's tone, the same kind of exhaustion she had felt countless times, doing everything right, working harder than anyone else, and still being ignored. But not tonight. Not now. Tonight, Maya had a chance to show everyone who she really was. She quickly glanced over at Preston, who had been hovering nearby, waiting for her to make a mistake. His smirk had faltered the moment she picked up the phone, but now, it was gone entirely. He couldn't stop her now. "Maya, what the hell are you doing?" Preston's voice was low but sharp, cutting through the silence. Maya turned her head slowly, meeting his eyes without hesitation. "I'm saving the deal," she replied, her tone colder than she intended. He stepped closer, his expression filled with disbelief. "You think you're qualified to handle $1 billion deal?" Preston's voice was mocking, like he didn't even believe she could understand the stakes. Maya straightened up, a surge of confidence rising within her. She wasn't going to back down. Not anymore. "I'm qualified enough to stop a disaster," she said, her words clear and final. She turned back to the phone, ignoring the tension in the air as she refocused on the conversation with Yuki. "I'll speak with Mr. Whitmore. Don't worry, we'll fix this." "Thank you, Maya," Yuki said, her voice finally sounding steady. "Thank you for everything." Maya smiled slightly, her fingers still gripping the phone tightly as she hung up. She was about to do something no one in this room expected, something that would change the course of the night. Without a second thought, she approached Alexander Whitmore, her steps measured and sure. The room fell quiet as she walked across the polished marble floor, her heels clicking with authority. She could feel the stares, the whispers, the same way she always did. But tonight, it didn't matter. She stopped just beside him, her presence unmistakable. "Mr. Whitmore, we need to talk," she said, her voice steady but urgent. He looked up, startled. His eyes flicked over her with that familiar dismissive glance, but something was different this time. He could feel it. "What is it, Maya?" he asked, his tone irritated but still professional. "I need you to reconsider the contract," she said, keeping her voice low enough that only he could hear. "There's been a mistake. A serious one." He raised an eyebrow, his eyes narrowing. "What are you talking about?" "The deal's ready to be signed." "The terms have been altered," she replied quickly, her words coming out with an almost surgical precision. "If you sign that contract tonight, Tanaka Global could lose everything." The room seemed to hold its breath as she spoke. The buzz of conversation around them dulled, and for a moment, all that mattered was the gravity of what she was saying. Alexander blinked, his brow furrowing. "You're saying the contract is a fake?" His voice was skeptical, but Maya saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "I'm saying it's been altered," she corrected. "And if you don't act fast, you'll lose everything you've worked for." There was a long pause, the tension thick in the air. Maya could feel the weight of the moment hanging between them. And then, without another word, Alexander stood up, a look of determination crossing his face. "Get the lawyers in here. Now." Maya's heart raced. She had done it. She had saved the deal. And just like that, everything had changed. The room seemed to come alive again as Alexander rushed to make the call, but Maya stood still, watching as the chaos around her unfolded. It was almost surreal. The same. People who had ignored her, belittled her, now looked at her with respect, something she had never gotten from them before. She had earned it. She had saved the day. And for the first time in her life, Maya Brooks knew exactly what it felt like to be seen. As Maya stood there, watching Alexander Whitmore bark orders into his phone, she could feel the weight of the room shift. The eyes that had once dismissed her now lingered with curiosity and perhaps a touch of awe. She had done the impossible. She had saved the deal. But as much as the victory felt sweet, it didn't erase the sting of the hours spent being invisible. The long years of hard work, of knowing that no one saw her for who she truly was, until tonight. Alexander hung up the phone, his eyes meeting hers with a mix of gratitude and something else she couldn't quite place. "Maya, that was," he paused, clearly choosing his words carefully. "That was impressive." She nodded once, keeping her expression neutral. "Thank you. I owe you one," he said, a trace of sincerity in his voice. Maya didn't respond right away. She wasn't in it for the thanks. She wasn't in it for the recognition. What she wanted What she'd always wanted was a seat at the table. The room, which had been buzzing with quiet murmurs just moments ago, was now silent. All the wealthy investors and board members were watching her, waiting for her to move, to speak, to do something. And for the first time in a long time, Maya felt the pressure of their eyes. She had been right. This was her moment. "You should get back to work." Preston's voice cut through the silence, sharp and condescending. "The dinner isn't over." Maya turned to face him, her posture straightening as she locked eyes with him. There was no anger in her gaze, just quiet resolve. "I already did more than enough for tonight," she said evenly, her voice calm but unwavering. Preston's smirk faltered, but only for a moment. "Fine," he muttered, turning away. Maya didn't watch him leave. She didn't need to. She had already won. Her eyes returned to Alexander, who was now standing still, his gaze focused on her. The tension in the air was palpable, but Maya wasn't afraid of it anymore. "I've made my calls," Alexander said, his voice a bit softer now. "Tanaka Global will honor the contract as it is, and the deal will go through." Maya's lips curled into a small smile, but it wasn't for him. "Good," she replied, her tone cool. "Now, do me a favor." Alexander raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "Treat people like you treat your clients," she said, her words carrying more weight than they had any right to. He looked at her, processing what she had just said. Then, as if something clicked, he nodded. "I will," he promised. Maya didn't wait for him to say more. She turned and walked toward the back of the restaurant, her heart still pounding in her chest, but with a newfound sense of purpose. She knew the night wasn't over yet. She wasn't about to let herself fade back into the shadows. As she passed the staff entrance, she heard whispers from the others, from the people who worked with her day in and day out, the ones who knew how hard she'd worked for everything. They didn't need to say anything. The look in their eyes was enough. Maya had done it. She had proven herself. And maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new for her. No longer would she just be the waitress in the background. She had earned her place. And now, she would make sure the world knew it. The following days after the dinner, the air around Maya felt different. It was subtle at first, the kind of shift that comes when 1,000 little moments build up into something bigger. She had saved the deal. She had stepped into a room full of billionaires, and she had walked out of it with her head held high. No one had expected her to be the one to turn things around. Not Preston, not Alexander, not anyone. But Maya had done it. And the city of Manhattan, with its bright lights and tall buildings, felt somehow smaller now, more accessible. She wasn't just the waitress anymore. She was someone who had been seen. That alone changed everything. On the morning of the following Monday, she walked into the restaurant with the same sense of purpose that had carried her through the last week. The moment she entered, there was a shift in the atmosphere. The other staff members gave her subtle nods of acknowledgement, even a smile here and there. Maya noticed it, but didn't dwell on it. She was used to being invisible, and now, for the first time, she was noticed for something beyond her uniform. As the evening rush came in, Maya found herself standing at the host station, greeting customers with a smile. But there was something different about the way they looked at her now. No longer with indifference. This time, there was respect. A family entered the restaurant, 2 adults and a young girl, about 8 years old. The father, wearing a tailored suit and a look of quiet authority, met her eyes as they approached the podium. "Table for 3, please," he said, his voice deep and commanding. Maya smiled and guided them to their table, noticing how his gaze lingered on her for a moment too long. She wondered if he knew who she was, or if he had heard about what had happened at the dinner. As she walked back to the kitchen, she could feel the weight of his eyes on her. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it was different. For the first time, she wasn't being judged. She was being regarded. The shift wasn't just internal, it was external, too. That evening, as she cleared dishes and refilled drinks, she saw Alexander Whitmore again. He was seated with a different group of businessmen, but this time, he wasn't talking to anyone else. His attention was on her. Maya knew he wasn't used to being this vulnerable, not in a place like this. She kept her distance, but noticed his lingering gaze. It wasn't the same as before. There was no condescension in his look. There was something else, something close to respect, something she had never received from him before. She didn't acknowledge him directly, but she felt his presence. He wasn't just a businessman. He was a man who had witnessed someone challenge everything he thought he knew. He had witnessed a woman do something he would never have expected, and it had changed the way he saw her. After a few minutes, he stood up and walked toward her, his steps purposeful. Maya wasn't surprised. She had known this moment was coming. Maya, he began, his voice uncharacteristically soft. I wanted to thank you. What you did for Tanaka Global, it saved more than just the deal. It saved my reputation. She raised an eyebrow, not giving him the satisfaction of a smile just yet. I'm glad I could help, she replied, her tone even, her voice as steady as it had been the night of the dinner. I don't think you understand, he continued, glancing around at the other patrons who were oblivious to the exchange. What you did was, he trailed off, choosing his words carefully. It was important. More important than any of this. Maya watched him, seeing the man who had once been too proud to admit a mistake now standing before her, humbled. He had always been the type to rely on power, to use it like a shield. But now, he was offering something else, something real. You've earned something, he said finally. A place at the table. You're not just a waitress anymore. The words hung in the air between them, and Maya allowed herself a moment to process them. She hadn't been doing this for the recognition. She hadn't even been doing it for the respect. She had been doing it for herself, for the woman who had been overlooked and underestimated for so long. Thank you, she said simply, nodding once, but not allowing her emotions to show too much. It was enough. She wasn't here for a pat on the back. She was here to change the way things worked. To change the game. Alexander stood there for a moment longer, looking at her, before he nodded and walked away, leaving Maya to continue her work. She had done what she came to do. And as the evening stretched on, Maya realized something. She wasn't just serving food anymore. She was serving change. She had earned a place, not just at the table, but in the world. The world that had once overlooked her was now taking notice. And this was just the beginning. It was the following week when Maya first walked into the boardroom of Whitmore Enterprises. The tall glass walls gave a panoramic view of the city, just like the one she had seen the night of the dinner. But this time, she wasn't serving meals or standing in the background. She was sitting at the table. She had been asked to join the meeting with the executive team, a step that seemed so foreign to her just days before. Alexander Whitmore was sitting at the head of the table, just like he had at the dinner, but this time, he wasn't the one calling all the shots. Maya was. As the meeting progressed, Maya found herself in a strange new world. Team. Maya couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. She wasn't just getting by anymore. She was leading. It felt different. The respect in the room was real. As the meeting ended and the executives filed out, Alexander stayed behind. He looked at Maya for a long moment before speaking. I'll be honest with you, he said, his voice quieter now. I didn't expect this from you. I thought you were just someone who served food. But you've proven me wrong. Maya met his gaze and smiled, a small but genuine smile. I never expected you to expect anything from me, Mr. Whitmore, she said calmly. But I've always known what I'm capable of. Alexander nodded slowly, as if thinking over her words. I'm glad we found out, he said. You've earned your place here, Maya. More than anyone else, you've earned it. Maya didn't say anything more. She didn't need to. She had done what she came to do. She had shown them all. She wasn't invisible anymore. As she left the boardroom and walked down the hall, she felt the weight of her steps, not heavy, but full of purpose. She had earned this. She had earned more than just a seat at the table. She had earned their respect. And now, nothing could take that away from her. The world, for the first time, had seen her for who she truly was. Weeks passed, and with each one, Maya's presence in the corporate world grew stronger. What had started as a singular moment of proving herself had become a new chapter in her life. One where she was no longer the invisible waitress, but a key player in a game she had never imagined herself part of. Alexander Whitmore's respect for her grew as he began to rely on her insights, particularly in the Asian markets, where her knowledge proved invaluable. But it wasn't just Alexander. The other executives began to look at her differently, too. The woman who had been serving dinner just months ago was now a trusted advisor, helping shape critical decisions. Yet, as much as she thrived in the corporate world, something still felt unsettled inside her. She was doing well, better than she ever imagined, but there were days when the weight of it all felt like too much. The pressure to prove herself, to constantly rise above expectations, was exhausting. There were moments when she wondered if anyone truly saw her. Did they only see her as the woman who fixed a business deal? Or did they see her for who she really was? A woman who had fought to be where she was, who had lived through so much to get to this point. One evening, as she sat in the quiet of her apartment, sipping tea and flipping through a report, Maya received a call. It was from Hiroshi Tanaka, the CEO of Tanaka Global, the very man she had helped save months ago. Maya-san. His voice came through the phone, warm and familiar. I have been meaning to call you. We are opening new opportunities for our partnership with Whitmore Enterprises, and I believe you should be a part of it. Maya's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just about business anymore. This was a chance to take her career to new heights, to step into a role that many would never even dream of. She listened intently as Hiroshi spoke about expanding their joint ventures, about new projects that would span continents. He was offering her an opportunity to be more than just an advisor. He was offering her a seat at the table of the highest level of international business. You have shown me great integrity, Maya, he continued. And now, I want to help you grow. As he outlined the details, Maya felt a rush of emotions. She had always dreamed of something bigger, something beyond the confines of the restaurant. But this was more than she had ever imagined. This was her chance to step into the world she had always known she belonged in, even when others had doubted her. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of meetings, negotiations, and strategy sessions. She found herself in boardrooms with top-tier executives from both Whitmore Enterprises and Tanaka Global, collaborating on projects that spanned across industries and countries. It was intense, thrilling, and at times, overwhelming. But Maya thrived. She had found her place, not just as a participant, but as a leader. Her insights into the international market and her understanding of cultural nuances made her an invaluable asset to the teams. Slowly but surely, Maya was carving out a name for herself in a world that had once seemed so out of reach. But even as her career soared, Maya couldn't help but feel a pull to the people she had left behind. The people who had seen her for who she truly was long before the corporate world ever did. She returned to the restaurant one evening, just to check in with the staff and remind herself of where it all began. As she walked through the familiar door, a wave of nostalgia hit her. The clink of silverware, the hum of conversation, the warm, inviting smell of food, it all felt like home. The staff, who had once seen her as just another face in the crowd, now greeted her with respect and admiration. She wasn't just their colleague anymore. She was someone they looked up to. It was then that Maya realized something crucial. This journey wasn't just about proving herself to others. It was about proving to herself that she could accomplish anything she set her mind to. She wasn't just the waitress anymore. She was Maya Brooks, an executive, a leader, and a force to be reckoned with. And as she looked around the restaurant, she knew this was only the beginning of what she could achieve. Months had passed since Maya's world had changed, and now, she was standing at the top of her game. Her days were spent in high-level meetings with corporate leaders from both Whitmore Enterprises and Tanaka Global. It was everything she had ever dreamed of, and yet, there were moments when she felt an unfamiliar emptiness. She had climbed to the top, but there was something missing. She had spent so much of her life proving herself to others, showing that she was more than just a waitress, more than just a woman who served food. But now that she had everything she thought she wanted, she began to wonder if there was more to life than this. It wasn't about the money anymore. It wasn't about the power or the prestige. It was about finding meaning in the work she did, in the people she surrounded herself with. She missed the simplicity of her old life, the unfiltered moments, the raw connections. Maya had spent so much time building walls around herself to keep the world from seeing her as weak, but now, she was learning that strength didn't come from building walls. It came from knowing who you were and what you stood for. She had found success in the corporate world, but the hunger for something deeper, something real, gnawed at her. One afternoon, after a particularly long day of meetings, Maya decided to take a step back. She drove to a quiet park outside the city, a place where she could sit and clear her mind. As she sat by the lake, watching the water ripple in the breeze, she thought about all the people who had helped her along the way. Her mother, who had raised her with love and grit, who had taught her to be strong even when life wasn't fair. The colleagues at the restaurant who had supported her when she was just starting out. And Hiroshi Tanaka, the man who had trusted her when she had no reason to expect it. As the sun began to set, Maya realized that what she had been searching for all along wasn't more success or recognition. It was connection. The kind of connection she had with the people who had believed in her before anyone else had. The kind of connection that went beyond business deals and corporate strategies. When she returned to the city, she decided to take a step in a new direction. She started mentoring young women who were just starting their careers, women who, like her, had big dreams but didn't know how to navigate the complexities of the corporate world. She shared her story with them, the story of how she had been underestimated, overlooked, and ultimately, how she had changed the game. Maya found peace in helping others find their voice. It was more fulfilling than any business deal. She began to see that her true purpose wasn't just to succeed, it was to help others succeed, too. Her life had always been about proving herself, but now, it was about lifting others up, showing them that their worth wasn't defined by the obstacles they faced, but by their ability to rise above them. As she continued to grow in her career and her personal life, Maya found a balance she had never known before. She was no longer chasing external validation. She was creating her own path, one that was shaped by her values, her passions, and her desire to make a difference in the world. She still had her seat at the table, but now, it wasn't just about being there. It was about using her voice to make the world a better place for the people who had always been overlooked. Maya Brooks had proven that the quietest voices often carried the most weight, and she had learned that true power came from within. It had been nearly a year since Maya had first walked into Whitmore Enterprises as nothing more than a waitress. Now, she sat at the head of her own department, her team looking to her for guidance, advice, and leadership. She had found her place in the corporate world, not by fitting in, but by staying true to who she was. And that was more than enough. The view from her office was breathtaking, panoramic windows offering a sweeping view of the skyline. The hustle and bustle of the city below felt distant from the calm of her space. But despite the success, Maya never forgot where she came from. She still remembered the days when she had to balance multiple jobs just to make ends meet, when she had to fight for every opportunity that came her way. Those memories, though distant, were her foundation. They kept her grounded. It was late one afternoon when the call came. Hiroshi Tanaka, the same man who had once trusted her to save the deal, was on the other end of the line. Maya-san. His voice was warm but carried an underlying urgency. I need your help again. The request was simple, but it meant something bigger. Tanaka Global was considering a major expansion, one that would require a complex set of negotiations, involving multiple global players. He wanted Maya to lead the negotiations. The weight of the request wasn't lost on her. She had been trusted before, but this was different. It was the opportunity to take the lessons she had learned, to use her voice and her experience, to shape something much larger. She thought about it for a moment, the weight of the decision pressing on her, but she didn't hesitate. I'll do it, Maya said with quiet confidence. I'll lead the negotiations. When the news hit Whitmore Enterprises, the response was mixed. There were some who doubted her. There were always those who would question her abilities, who would wonder if she was capable of handling such a major responsibility. But Maya wasn't bothered by the skepticism. She had earned every step she had taken, and she was ready to prove herself again. The meetings with Tanaka Global and the international partners were intense. Maya found herself in high-stakes rooms, negotiating terms, navigating complex relationships, and leveraging every ounce of her knowledge. She was no longer the woman who had to fight for a seat at the table. She was the one in charge, making decisions that would affect millions of dollars and the future of multiple companies. As the negotiations progressed, Maya found herself reflecting on how far she had come. She had started from the bottom, ignored, dismissed, and underestimated. Now, she was a force to be reckoned with. The final day of negotiations arrived, and the pressure was higher than ever. Maya stood before the key players, including Hiroshi Tanaka, Alexander Whitmore, and the other international executives. She had everything riding on this moment, and she wasn't about to let it slip away. The room was silent as she presented the final terms of the deal. Her words were clear, calculated, and precise. When she finished, there was a long pause. The room was waiting for approval, for confirmation that the deal was done. And then, Hiroshi Tanaka stood up and nodded. It's done, he said, his voice filled with respect. Maya could feel a sense of pride swell in her chest. She had done it. The deal was sealed, and she had led them all to victory. As she walked out of the room, Alexander Whitmore approached her, a look of genuine respect on his face. "I've never seen anything like that," he said, his voice low. "You've taken this company, and this industry, by storm, Maya." Maya nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "I've only just begun," she replied. And she meant it. She had risen above the odds, but her journey was far from over. Maya had proved that no matter where you started, no matter how many times you were overlooked, you could rise. And she wasn't going to stop. There was more to be done, more to be achieved. She was just getting started. Months went by, and Maya's life continued to unfold in ways she had never imagined. She had become an integral part of the business world, sitting in rooms filled with high-powered executives, making decisions that shaped the future of companies. But even with all her success, she couldn't help but feel a pull towards something more. She had built a reputation as a strong leader, someone who could handle the pressure of billion-dollar deals with ease. Her insights were highly valued, and her ability to navigate complex international relations had earned her the respect of some of the most powerful people in the world. Yet, despite all of this, there was something inside her that knew she hadn't fully embraced her purpose. It wasn't just about business, money, or status anymore. She had a deeper calling. It wasn't long before she made a decision. After a particularly successful round of meetings with global partners, Maya sat in her office, staring out over the city, thinking about her next step. She had the power to change more than just corporate deals. She had the ability to change lives. With a firm sense of purpose, she reached for the phone and called Hiroshi Tanaka. "Maya-san," he greeted her, his voice warm as always. "How are things on your end?" "I'm doing well, Hiroshi. But I've been thinking," Maya replied, her voice steady, "about what's next. I've been in the business world for a while now, and I feel like I need to do something more, something that will truly make a difference." Hiroshi paused for a moment before responding. "I understand. You've done amazing things in the business world, but you've always been about something more than just success." Maya nodded, though he couldn't see her. "Exactly. I want to help others, specifically women, find their voices in a world that often overlooks them. I've been where they are, and I want to help them rise above it all." Hiroshi's voice softened. "That sounds like the next step for you. I believe in you, Maya. I always have." With Hiroshi's blessing, Maya moved forward with her plan. She started by establishing a mentorship program for young women who were just beginning their careers. It was something she had always wanted to do, giving back, using her experiences to help others find the same success and confidence that she had fought so hard to achieve. She began speaking at conferences, sharing her story, and offering guidance to those who had once felt invisible, just as she had. The response was overwhelming. Women from all walks of life reached out, eager to learn from her journey, to hear how she had gone from a waitress to one of the most influential voices in business. Maya didn't just teach them business strategies or negotiation tactics. She taught them how to believe in themselves, how to own their worth, how to silence the doubt and the fear that had held them back for so long. She shared her struggles, her failures, and her triumphs, showing them that success wasn't just about what you achieved. It was about who you became in the process. As the months passed, Maya's mentorship program grew. She partnered with other organizations, expanded her reach, and helped countless women find their footing in a world that often made it harder for them to succeed. She saw herself in every woman she mentored, each one carrying their own burdens, their own dreams, their own doubts. But together, they were building something stronger than they could ever do alone. One evening, as Maya was preparing for a keynote speech at a major women's leadership conference, she paused to look back at everything she had accomplished. She had made it to the top, yes, but it wasn't the fame, the power, or the accolades that brought her joy anymore. It was the women whose lives she had touched, the ones who now saw their own potential because of her. As she stood on that stage, looking out over the sea of faces, Maya realized that her journey had come full circle. She wasn't just the woman who had once been underestimated and overlooked. She was the woman who had shown others how to rise, how to be seen, and how to stand tall in a world that often tried to keep them small. And as she spoke, sharing her story with those who needed to hear it, Maya knew that her real work had just begun.